Our faith has been at the core of our 42-year marriage. We wanted our faith, to reflect a very positive experience and dynamic, really.
We've, wanted all of our children to have that same faith and instill that faith and the values that go along with that.
Yeah, we see those values and principles reflected in so many ways as each of our 3 sons continued to explore their own path in life.
I grew up in a really strong church community and was in that community for 24 years. I am phenomenally grateful that I had a family, that was surrounded by love, but also really embedded in a community.
I couldn't imagine living without a faith. I just loved the worship and the fellowship and everything. Yeah, and that's just how it's always been all my life.
You were a pastor's child,
Yeah.
So you had that very strict, conservative upbringing, whereas I always class myself as a very liberal Christian family. We're going away for the weekend, we wouldn't try and find a local church to go to, whereas if you were away for the weekend, you'd go and try and find the church.
I don't think I skipped a day until I was about 19.
My father was a pastor, and I gravitated towards the same kind of work, probably because I saw the kind of life my dad lived, and it was something that you're really motivated to do out of a very deep faith consciousness that this is the right thing to do.
I come from a family of Christians, and so it is something that I've grown up in and that is really part of my thinking and my makeup, and everything that I am really has its roots in Christianity.
I grew up in a Christian church environment, and then in my early 20s I actually became part of quite a fundamental Christian church, and that's where I met my beautiful partner Linda.
I didn't grow up in a Christian environment, but when I was 20 I started going to church, and it changed my life quite significantly, because I was already out at 17, but I went back in. I recluded back into the closet for the next 16 years, fighting with myself about my sexuality. I got married, I had children, and then when my marriage ended, I couldn't fight anymore. I thought I just have to be true to myself. I can't keep doing this.
It is a misperception to believe that you choose to be gay. Where you have a choice is about your sexual behaviour. But your sexual preference, I do believe from all the research that has come out, that is not something that you have a choice about. It is a given. I think as human beings we love to put things into boxes, into categories, and would be very comfortable with knowing that someone is either male or female, heterosexual or homosexual. But in fact what happens is we all fall somewhere along the continuum of sexuality.
Ben was a little bit worried when he came out because he packed his bag, he left home. He said to us the day before, "Mum and Dad, can you make sure you're home early tomorrow and both be here because there's something I want to tell you about?" And we didn't have a clue what it was.
We had a suspicion, actually.
We did, and it was quite funny. We're laying there in bed at night and we're talking about what's he going to talk to us about, and I was getting nervous. Has he met a girl or has he run away and that? And I just jokingly said, "Oh, he's probably going to tell us he's gay or something," and I was joking about it.
And I said, "I think that might be the truth."
And when we got home, he'd written the most beautiful letter. When we read this letter and after we'd stopped crying and we just looked at each other and we thought, what do we feel about this? And I didn't feel any different. I didn't feel any different about Ben because I love him and he's my son, and I thought that maybe if he came out and he told us he was gay, that all of a sudden I'd turn against him and be horrified, but we didn't. And I didn't think it was such a big thing.
When Reece came out, then fear took over because of all the beliefs that we've been told about same-sex attraction. and I was worried of what was going to happen to Reese.
I guess what I've been brought up with, and then having these feelings at a young age that I just didn't know if they were normal. Like, who could I really go to? Who could I share it with? And if people would think of me as a freak.
I guess once I kind of got to my teenage years, I started to fall away from my faith a bit. And partly I think that had to do with coming to the realisation that I was gay, sort of when I was like around 16, 17. And I had this feeling that I had to make a choice to either be gay or to be Christian.
I think when I first came out, you know, that was after many, many years of trying to be straight and trying to do the right thing, because I was always a good little girl, you know, trying to do the right thing. I'd confided in a family member, a bit of an extended family member, and that extended family member breached my confidence and reported me to the church. Basically, it caused a bit of a problem in that the church pastor at the time made a visitation to my mum and dad and to me. Hazily, I remember that he pulled out the fundamentals. You know, these are the fundamentals of the church, and there's probably a bunch of Bible texts there, but it was all about these are the fundamentals of the church.
When I was 12, I learned what the word gay meant, you know, and I went, well, that's what I am. And so I had 15 years of my journey to work out what it meant to me, how I expressed that. And so when I tell people now, I go, that's day one of their journey. You know, so for Ruth Ellen, when I first told her and her response was, you can marry me, we can hide this. I went, that's just her journey. That's where she's starting.
And I remember saying to you, okay, you're gay. I really didn't know what that meant. If you still want to marry me, you can, and that's okay.
Yeah, you actually said, look, it's okay, you don't have to tell anyone else. I will marry you and love you, and you can keep that as your secret, and that's cool with me.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be cruel or wrong about what I said. I had the best of intentions.
I needed the church. I needed the church community. They were part of my life. And I needed to be able to share this with someone. I was 36 when I actually told a pastor, and his response was wonderful. He embraced me and counselled me and heard my story. And even though we didn't agree theologically, he accepted me as a person, and I wasn't kicked out of the church.
When Dad came out, I didn't see this coming at all. It was so far out of left field that it just kind of blew my mind when he told me. He said, do you want to go for a walk? Sometimes we do, just walk after dinner, catch up, just see how each other are going. And it was about, I don't know, probably 10 minutes into the walk that he said, I've got to tell you something, my marriage is over. And I was like, okay, what's happened? And then he told me he was gay. And it was probably, it seemed like forever, like 10 minutes. Your head's just kind of, time slows down. I'm sure it wasn't 10 minutes, it was probably like 30 seconds, but just out of nowhere, this was suddenly there, and it was, wait, what did you say again?
And so I actually figured out before he told me. Felt surprisingly comfortable and natural in a way. Philosophically, it wasn't something that clashed with me too much.
I remember Mum called us all in, and she sat us all down. She looked quite worried and looked very serious. And I thought cancer. Someone's going to die here. It's, it's not going to be a pleasant situation, whatever's going on here. And then Dad started telling us his story and his past and how he always felt a little bit different this whole time. And we didn't really ask any questions. We just sort of sat there and listened to his story.
Coming out is not something you do once. You come out again and again and again at different levels in different places and different members of your family, depending on where they're at. I found the pain of hiding became worse than the pain of coming out. I guess at that time, I didn't know myself what was involved. I didn't know how it was going to impact. I didn't give them much detail. I wish I could go back and revisit that day, because 10 years on now, I could say so much more, in so much more detail and so much more passionately and with understanding. But at that stage, I was still embarrassed, ashamed, confused, in a very difficult place and very fragile place emotionally my own self. So I couldn't tell them very much either, and I knew they were impacted simply by the shock of the announcement.
It sort of all makes sense now, but I wish I'd known back then what I knew now.
I say the same thing. I wish I had known then what I know now too.
There is a close link between our sexuality and our spirituality. And so that the two things can sometimes, if something goes wrong in the sense that we're not accepted in terms of our sexuality, it can affect our spirituality as well and our spiritual development.
I think most religions have a phenomenal amount of institutionalised homophobia. So that institutionalised homophobia, even though no one might be preaching from the pulpit, about homosexuality and God's wrath on it, but there's just all of this little stuff, and all of the little comments and the little stuff adds up over time. And what that does is it tells you you don't belong here. It's telling you consistently over a lifetime that the things that you are and the things that you hold true are not part of this community. So often it's the subtle stuff. It's not necessarily the fire and brimstone, church rhetoric. It's just all the little stuff that says you are not one of us.
We are told all sorts of horrible things about gay people, and it's just understood that there is something inherently wrong with being gay. It's a subtle disapproval, and for a young person that does get integrated into our understanding of how the world works. And we basically, I know I certainly went through my church life thinking that I was something that everyone disapproved of.
I'm very sensitive to the language that is used. The notion of, let's love the sinner but hate the sin. That sort of language gives people license to move towards hate speech. And then the hate speech that comes from that sort of maybe well-intentioned language helps demonise the whole community. So that's one thing I think that the church needs to do, is to watch the language that they're using, and drawing a declension between sin and sinner and so on is not helpful.
I was at a Christian conference and I talked to my minister, and he said, well, that's fine. Ben's been a good leader of the church fellowship. I think we like Ben. He's a good person. I think we're happy to have him come to our church. If he brings his partner or friend, though, just please tell them not to hold hands or anything, will you? And don't tell anybody else that he's gay, because I don't want the other people in the congregation to know that.
Meanwhile, you have heterosexual people, a young couple that I can think of in particular, that were all over each other like a rash. And that was accepted. So it was very much a double standard.
Yeah.
We often say of our story that when our son first came out to us, he was out and proud, he came out and we went in the closet. So that was our, for 3 years, just the two of us, we were in that closet trying to sort things out. We didn't really talk to many people about it. We didn't have any support. We didn't know who to talk to, what to do. People in the church, they'll say, oh yes, we don't mind if someone gay comes to our church, but then you always feel like they have this agenda to, it's okay if you're gay, but we'll make sure that we change you, and then you'll be okay. We love you, but not so sure about your lifestyle.
Often it's very hard being a parent with a gay child in a community like that. We lost friends over it, because when people found out that Rebecca was gay, I think they were worried that somehow we'd contaminated Rebecca, and that if we had much to do with their children, they might be affected too. As if some people don't understand, they're ignorant, they don't understand that you can't just turn somebody gay, that
you can't catch gayness.
You can't catch it like an infection. But that seemed to be something that some of them, it was never really said to us, but it was just people distanced themselves.
Somehow one's sexual orientation can be caught or transmitted like a disease is still prevalent among many people. Like, would I want the LGBT community around my children because somehow that might be caught? That's got to stop. The idea that somehow LGBT is somehow akin or linked to pedophilia still exists in people's minds. It's unbelievable that in this generation and this time that people would make that connection, which is just not true.
In the past, they have said that homosexuality comes about because there's family conflict, or people are exposed to trauma, or there's an absent or weak father and very dominant mother. But none of those theories actually have been shown to have good evidence. We know that there is nothing that parents do that causes homosexual behaviour. So I think some of our responses within the church stem from lack of knowledge about the research behind GLTB science, really.
I went to my minister and I said, I think I'm going to run away with a woman. And she said, oh, no, come on, you'll be okay. Let's prayer, we'll go on a retreat, a prayer retreat, you'll be right. And I just looked at her and I said, I can't keep doing this. And the last words were, don't get hit by a bus. So I couldn't stay in the church, I had to leave at that point. It was just, I could stay if I was abstaining, but I couldn't stay and be in a relationship with a woman.
It is knowing the mindset of a lot of Christians. They take a lot of what is said literally and they forget about the human perspective, that there's people in genuine loving relationships, committed relationships that care about each other, that we work our jobs, we pay our taxes, we own homes, we have children, we do exactly what everybody else in society does, but we're still not fully accepted for who we are.
One of the singers in the church she was fairly young and she was a lovely girl and we had got to be friends, and she didn't understand why I wasn't married and why I didn't have a girlfriend. And after she asked me a few times, I decided to tell her. Then she spoke to her father, whom I also knew through the worship team, and he ended up writing a letter of complaint to the church. And so that led to a lot of heartache and a lot of trauma for me, but I ended up leaving that church.
It's a sad situation that church, which is supposed to be a place where we can foster each other's growth as spiritual beings and as children of God, that has to be the place that provides such heartache and such difficulties for so many people.
Look, I know the conventional wisdom within conservative church groups is the members of the LGBT community do not feel welcome. I understand that. I really do. But if they too can take some courage to say, it's okay, I deserve a place in the pew.
Part of the problem has been that the voices normally leave the conversations because we as queers leave the community. So there's a silence there. Our parents are left there kind of being, in silence. We've all left the community often because why would we stay? And so the conversation isn't had with all of the, the voices being heard. And I think what the church, churches need to do is maybe turn down the volume of their own voices and listen a little bit more to the voices that are in, within that congregation.
Lots and lots of people are really uncomfortable talking about it. And that's been the overwhelming thing. People will be supportive that you're going through something that might be a tough period of your life, but there's only so much they want to understand because it's a bit confronting.
One of the things that for me comes to mind that disappointed me at the time was there was a significant number of people who could be very supportive of us as a family, Dad excluded, as to what we were going through. He's made a choice to do something sinful in their minds, and so they could not, seemingly, some people, extend that same support to him. And that I found really, frankly, offensive, because it was taking a fundamental Christian value that needs to apply to everybody and being selective in its application.
To talk as the church as a whole, if you look at what their standpoint is, it's abomination before God. They pull these 6 verses out of the Bible and go, see, look, it says here 6 times that being gay is wrong. And I really struggle with that because I can't change who I am.
The texts in the Bible are often referred to as the clobber texts because they're used as weapons to clobber gay and lesbian men and women.
You have half a dozen textual references to sexual practices which aren't necessarily anything to do with sexual orientation, and that becomes a litmus test for whether people are taking morality seriously.
Precisely because the Bible is a text that has such great authority and often in people's lives, it needs to be taken seriously on its own terms. You can misuse it so easily if you're not letting it speak for itself. Taking the Bible just as it reads is taking it just as it reads to you. And the you that is being addressed is not a blank sheet. You've gone through life, you've had experiences. Someone else with different experiences may read it very differently.
I'm aware that some scholars have looked at those particular texts and said there are other ways of looking at them. And to me, the bigger problem is that often we look at that and don't treat the people, the individuals, with respect. I mean, the huge command is to love people.
I don't see myself as a teacher or a scholar as being someone who dictates to other people what they should believe, but I believe it's appropriate to ask the right questions about the text and so forth, to point people in possible other directions.
So to do my own research and to sort of get together all of the information that I had and present it in a concise and logical manner, that was the final step in the process for me in reconciling my faith and sexuality.
Gives you more confidence too when people have that discussion with you. You've got more knowledge to challenge them on what they have to say.
Absolutely.
And then I often think, well, how many gay people do you actually know? Have you ever met a gay person? Have you had a conversation with a gay person? Get out of your little Christian bubble and, go and meet somebody and talk to someone that's gay, and you realise they're just like everyone else.
That when you compare homosexual and heterosexual people, the similarities between them are much greater than the differences. And that when we compare them, for example, on measures of personality and functioning, there is no difference between the two groups.
To be able to live authentically, you're not lying, you don't feel like you're lying to anybody. It was the best thing that I ever did.
And I just thought, there's got to be some support somewhere. There has to be something that can help us in this journey that we're about to begin of reconciling our faith and our sexuality together. So that's what I started doing. I started looking for help and realising there actually wasn't a lot available at that point in time.
We started a support group down here too in Melbourne, and it's been amazing.
We found that it was really difficult for people coming out of the church thinking, okay, I'm gay, I realise that, I now need to go into the gay community. But the difference between the church community and the gay community is huge. So having a safe space, having that neutral space, it just allows people to be able to meet with others from Christian backgrounds that might understand some of their journey.
So I fully understand what it's like for people in the Christian church who have no reason to begin the journey. I had no choice but to begin the journey of understanding the issues of GLBTI Christians, because I am one. I remember my best friend said to me that he was reading up on the issue of homosexuality and Christianity. And I said, why are you doing that? And he said, because my best friend is gay. And so I've been very humbled by a lot of my friends who've begun that journey and have reached a point where I don't think they realise they would reach the point that they have.
Okay, well, I think what needs to happen, there needs to stop being this hypocrisy, because that's what I view it as. The church preaches love, and Jesus was very adamant that we must love one another, and particularly our brothers and sisters in Christ. So how can you say, yes, we love one another, and yet be judging people because of their sexual orientation? So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. And the second thing I think also that needs to happen is people need to become more educated, because I think there's a lot of ignorance about these issues, and I think with less ignorance there would be more acceptance.
Yeah, I would like the church to apologise to gay and lesbian people for the way they have been treated the way many of them have been hurt. Apologise to the parents and families who have lost their sons and daughters because of the treatment that the churches have given to them. It astounds me as to why they think gay and lesbian people are different to anybody else. Both Phil and I have become very vocal in our fight against this within our churches, and I'm not backwards in letting them know. I particularly love Facebook, as my wife knows.
Then there just came a time, a very distinct time I remember, where I thought, no, I've got to stop doing all this self-examination, ruminating, worrying, going over and over, and come to a place where I just said, right, put a lid on all those pots, stop asking all the questions, and just begin to accept. We had to really die to our dream as well. You know, you have a dream for your child when you're raising them that, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, they're going to be, you know, happily married, have children, all of that. And we realized, oh, actually, that was our dream for our son, but he has his own dreams and aspirations. So we really had to let a lot of that go.
I feel blessed at having a gay daughter, which has shocked a few people, because I have met so many remarkable people that I would never meet any other time, and that's just a fact.
Mum and Dad both now think that the queer community are the cleverest, most amazing people you'll ever meet in your life. So talk about a transition for them.
Well, it was harder for your father.
Your friends are so smart and they've all got PhDs and they're just the cleverest, most amazing people we've ever met.
In Canberra.
So they're like the head of PFLAG, which is, you know, the parents for lesbians and gays. It's like they're the cheer squad of the queer community, which is kind of nice.
And it's just interesting how, because I've been quite open about the fact we have a gay daughter, then people have found that out and come to talk to me, and you know, and it's spread. And I think that that's the only way we're going to reduce the homophobia and get a better dialogue going.
And there was another lady that came into my life who was going through, who had been through the same thing as me with her daughter in the church. And that helped me immensely, and she opened my eyes. And then from then on, my husband and I, we looked at Reese totally different. The fear, we got rid of the fear and just concentrated on Reese.
I think we need to drop the blame game. I think we need to stop blaming parents. We need to stop blaming people for who they are and what they are. We need to start realising that our sexual orientation is as much part of who we are as our skin colour, as I said, and the language we use or the language we are born with. My advice would be to find support in people that they feel comfortable and safe with. They need to surround themselves with people who are affirming and accepting.
For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. When I heard that, I was like, wow. That verse pretty much in a way just saved my own life. And just helping me just know that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. I had to just be patient and just wait for God to give me that answer.
If you're a young person coming out now, know that it won't always feel so just big in your mind, that you'll get past it. It gets better. It absolutely gets better. You will find your people. You will find love. You will find a whole bunch of things that matter to you. And just don't give up on that. We love you dearly, and the world is a better place for you being here.
I'd agree with that. The world is a richer place.
Don't let humans get in the way of your relationship with God. Your relationship with God should be more important than people who try and step in between.
Take your time. You don't have to make any quick decisions. I think the biggest thing to remember is that each person's journey is completely individual, and respecting that, but it's about finding that acceptance within themselves and knowing that at the end of it all, God loves them regardless.
And you can choose to repress who you really are, or you can choose to be psychologically healthy. And I'm not going to repress myself just so that someone else feels better about their theology.
I guess for me, looking back, I kind of realise I could have been a little bit more patient with my family as well. It was really upsetting to have my parents kind of been unsure about my sexuality when I came out to them, but know that people can change their mind and people can come around.
Love is an overriding principle that you see right through the Bible. Just find a way to apply it to accept and value people for whoever they are, wherever they're at. And there'll be challenges, but that will be the main guide that will help you overcome all of them.
There is so much damage done by living a lie in terms of not only to yourself, but everyone around you as well.
God didn't call us to judge. We don't need to do that. But he did call us to love.
I guess it's just to remember that they're still your parents and they still love you very much regardless of the circumstances, and that for them to come to that decision, there's probably been a very difficult journey for them and they need your support more than anything else.
My advice to other parents would be, don't be too upset. Find out some more about what it means to be LGBTQI. Maybe start with something like PFLAG.
Your perception is only a perception. It's not real. They're real. What they're feeling is real. And how you respond to them is real. Your perceptions are not.
I think we've really come to a place now where we realise more than anything that it's only God we have to please, and really what other people are going to think is really none of our business.
Be willing to, to allow your faith and your belief system to be, to be re-examined, to push the boat out, if you like, into the unknown and to begin to explore an area that's brand new and that can be pretty daunting and challenging. Takes a lot more courage. So, I would say, look, just know that a lot of good will come out of this process if you allow it to work and bring change into your life.
My fellow believers, the ones in the church that I love and I worship with every week, they will make the change. They will make the next step forward about this is not an issue. These are people. This is important. We must accept. We must understand. They will make the step. That's my prediction. And then eventually the church will say, you know what? This issue is not an issue with the people. My dream for LGBT people would be to just be accepted for who they are. Their achievements, their personality, their relationships, all the things that they are, and not just this one small part of who they are.